He's promised a new era for China, but critics of President Xi Jinping have compared him to Chairman Mao. Last month, the Chinese parliament voted to remove presidential term limits, giving Xi Jinping the right to remain in office indefinitely. So, what does one man with virtually unchecked power mean for the future of China and for the rest of the world? Joining me to debate this are Sharon Hom, Executive Director of the NGO Human Rights in China and Professor of Law at New York University, and from Beijing, Qinduo Xu, a political analyst at China Radio International and Senior Fellow at the Pangoal Institution. Thank you both for joining me in the arena. Qinduo, let me start with you. Is Xi Jinping, as some say, the new Mao? One of his biographers says he's now emperor for life.
No, it's different from the period run by Chairman Mao. For one thing, this is not the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s. So we are living in the 21st century with this 24/7 basically wall-to-wall media coverage and also social media. No government, no one person can basically control the whole society. No, it's not the case. And secondly, I think a lot of people don't really understand, what's going on within China, especially with this removal of term limit. I think there's, of course, technical reasons. They want to bring the terms unified with the party secretary and also chairman of the Central Military Commission. And also, I think I would see this as part of the Chinese exploration to seek a model, that's fit perfectly for the Chinese situation. Okay. So that's part of the efforts. I don't think this is the end of the Chinese politics. This is not the end of the history predicted at the end of the collapse of a former Soviet Union. No. It's not the end of that. It's a process.
Sharon Hom, what's your view? Is China heading into a new, even harsher era of strongman rule, of one-man rule?
Well, I think China's gone backwards, and I think China's gone backwards at least 40 years in several respects. One, China has gone backwards because it's failing to learn the lesson of the Cultural Revolution. And the lesson of the Cultural Revolution was to have all power concentrated in one leader that's unaccountable to the people, truly accountable to the people, will inevitably lead to mass suffering and abuses. And that's one lesson. The second is the difference between the Mao era. One is China is part of a global economy. Secondly, Chinese people today are not like the people that were closed off during the Cultural Revolution. You've got almost 800 million online on the internet. And despite censorship, despite legal controls, restrictive controls, propaganda controls, the fact remains that you can't control 1.4 billion people's views.
Qinduo, Sharon says there that one man with absolute power...
Can I respond a little bit here?
You can respond. Specifically, I would like you to respond to the point she made about Xi Jinping being one man unaccountable to the people, and that leads to abuses.
If you look at the Chinese latest changes to the constitution and the Chinese government and what they have done since the conclusion of the two sessions over there, you would see the tremendous changes that involved about 80 ministries or agencies, about institutional reforms, and also the National Supervisory Commission, this is super body for anti-corruption campaign. All those efforts are actually a response to the public content or discontent about corruption. And if you look at what China has achieved over the past couple of years in terms of treating the pollution issue, you would see what China has achieved basically it's something it took Los Angeles and London decades to achieve. 30% reduction of the pollution in this densely populated area like Beijing or Shanghai. So that's the response from the government. They are very responsive to the public concern. So I would say, though China's system is very different from the Western style, but it is very responsive.
Sharon, isn't that a fair point that we need to recognize the good things that China has done with this undemocratic model in terms of cleaning up the environment, extreme poverty, development? Would you concede that?
So there are three things to say about that. First of all, no one contests that millions of people have been lifted out of poverty, and that China is leading and doing very important in technology, green technology, and in dealing with the pollution problem. But the third thing is that growing inequality in China is a fact, and that the economy is slowing down, and that's going to exacerbate the problem. The issue is not whether China, Western model, Chinese model. I really want to emphasize that every system, including the U.S., has problems. And so the issue is not whether one system is better than another. The question is whether the people who are the most directly affected by the policies and by the choices of the leaders have a voice. And that's what's key. And in China, it is a hostile, restrictive environment for any voice that is critical of Xi Jinping or of the party.
Qinduo, isn't that the case? Isn't Sharon correct there that you cannot criticize? He is in a sense a supreme leader. The Chinese model was supposed to be about consensus, the party, elites coming together, a meritocracy. That was what we were told. Even by Chinese standards, this is a pretty radical move, one-man rule.
It is a radical change, let's say, and if you look at his re-election, that's by unanimously, the delegates, about 3,000 of them, unanimously elected Mr. Xi to continue.
Did they really
his
have a choice?
Term. Of course, you can drop your vote, or you can vote against that.
Okay.
Because nobody is pointing a gun at your head to force you to do something. No. And also, if you look at the polls, 84% of the Chinese respondents thinks their government, they have trust in their government. And 68% of them, when it comes to the government leadership, think the Chinese government will lead them to a better future.
Before we run out of time, let me ask you this, about bringing it back to the president of China. Xi Jinping broke with tradition last October by not naming a successor at the Communist Party's National Congress. Now, clearly you're a supporter of his, you think indefinite rule is not a problem, but surely Chinese politicians must be wondering what comes next. He's not a young man. Is there an heir?
We don't know, basically, what will happen, say, 10 years from now, 15 years from now.
I'm asking what would happen next week.
There is basically this issue. What we know is like stability and continuity of Chinese development, rapid development, 6.5%. That's almost for sure for next year, for the next 5 years or 10 years. That's the predictability. That's the stability Chinese people are welcoming.
Okay, Sharon?
Well, I want to say that President Xi Jinping has actually indicated quite publicly and repeatedly that he does have ambitions, and he does feel he is a global leader, and he does feel that China should be a global leader, and it's reflected in the party work report, it's reflected in the next 5 years plan. So Xi Jinping thought, with absolute leadership of the party and with the role of the party domestically and the role of China internationally, is encapsulated in official policy.
Given everyone agrees that China has opened up economically, made progress economically, on this president's watch, on this president who's making radical changes, as Qinduo conceded, are we going to see political opening up as well? Are we going to see more quote-unquote liberal moves, more democratic moves? Qinduo, then Sharon.
No, because a lot of people would look at China with the background, the cultural background, the Western cultural background, and the Western tradition. People tend to use the Western rules, basically Western rulers, to measure the Chinese development. Say whether China is a democracy, or whether China have these checks and balances, or whether China does fit this model or not. No, China will never be like the U.S. Will never be
India?
like
You don't have to be like the U.S. India is in your neck of the woods, and is a democracy and developing and doing very well at poverty reduction.
Yes, we have our own challenges. We have our own models. So I would say, please respect the Chinese development. China has been successful. Chinese people are happy. And people say, hey, you are different from us. You are a communist country, so you must be bad. This is crazy.
Sharon?
So I think it's very important that when we say the Chinese people, I really don't think not even that you can say 1.3 billion people believe what Mr. Xi just said, or what Xi Jinping says they should believe. If you think about the rights defense lawyers, the human rights defenders, if you talk to Tibetans and Uyghurs, if you talk to intellectuals, if you talk to all the thousands of signers of Charter 08, Liu Xiaobo, if you think about Xu Zheyong, and countless of Chinese citizens who demanded reforms and political reforms, the 78 democracy wall, the 89 Tiananmen democracy movement. These are Chinese people, Chinese women feminists who are organizing peacefully around domestic violence issues and discrimination against women. These are all issues that Chinese society faces, and Chinese people have something to say about it, and they have a voice, and it's not monolithic. And we have to help create the space that enables them to decide what kind of future and what kind of present they want.
We'll have to leave it there. Sharon Hom, Qinduo Xu, thank you both for joining me in the arena. That's our show. UpFront will be back next week.